Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza from the COVID-19 Cyber Threat Coalition here, and I have an incredibly special guest. I'm actually very excited for this guest. With me is Michael Daniel. Now, if you don't know who he is the president and CEO of the Cyber Threat Alliance, one of the premier intel threat sharing organizations in the world. And Michael, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, quite happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Believe me, my pleasure. Now, before we dive into the Cyber Threat Alliance, or CTA, I think our audience would absolutely love to hear your background because, quite frankly, I think it's beyond impressive.
Well, thanks. I actually spent 21 and a half years in the U.S. federal government. The last 4.5, I was on the National Security Council as President Obama's Cybersecurity Advisor. So my official title was Special Assistant to the President and Cybersecurity Coordinator for the U.S.
Wow. And that is an impressive title. And I have to imagine, though, that one of the toughest jobs in the world has to be defending the White House, which is probably the largest target for state-sponsored hacking.
So, I mean, that job had a whole lot of complexities to it. But yes, I mean, working with the security folks for the White House certainly was always, we were always under attack, under, threat of intrusion. And certainly one of the things that, we began to see over time too, was that, generally, especially when I first started, like when you would find an intruder, and they would usually just kind of slink away, right? They would realize that you'd caught them and they would just kind of, vanish like mist. But eventually later on, they began to actually battle us for control over, and access to the network, and you'd knock them out and they'd come right back. So definitely over time, our adversaries got more and more aggressive.
Wow. So pretty much it's like an advanced persistent threat, but you know that the advanced persistent threat is there.
Yes.
Wow, that's crazy. Now, I know that a lot of my audience that follows me, watches me, listens to me knows that I'm very agnostic when it comes to politics. I feel like cybersecurity is neither right or left. The whole world needs this. But I know that, we have a new administration that took over from the Obama administration. And so they have done a lot of reshuffling and reassignment of cybersecurity personnel in the White House. And I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are on that, just understanding what the landscape was, obviously, in the Obama administration, and now here we are.
Yeah, so I think actually overall with the Trump administration, it's been kind of a mixed bag. Within the White House, they eliminated my old position. And I truly believe that was a mistake because the nature of cybersecurity is that it's inherently a cross-disciplinary issue, if you will. I mean, you need to be bringing different departments and agencies together, whether you're talking about the Defense Department and the intelligence community, law enforcement, network defenders. Yeah. And you really need a strong presence at the White House to do that, and sort of downgrading that position and putting it into the background, and putting the rest of the cyber staff into the background, I don't think is very helpful. Now, to their credit, they have had some really strong people out at the departments and agencies. So people like, Chris Krebs, and before she left, Jeanette Manfra at DHS, and right. General Nakasone up at NSA. And so, that's why I say it's a mixed bag, because, some parts have done well, but I think overall, we've actually receded some in the capability of the U.S. government in cybersecurity, and that's very troubling in this time.
Yeah. So to say it another way, if we are receding, we are introducing risk.
Correct.
Okay. So it's not necessarily a lateral move as a reshuffle. You believe there's possibly more risk now, even as we are evolving new cyber attack and everything else. I think that's obviously a little concerning as an American citizen, but hopefully they'll get back on track. And like you said, there are a lot of really good people, in various departments in cybersecurity. And I've been Chris Krebs, for example, I've been following his work for some time as well. So I think that's really cool. Now let's get to the Cyber Threat Alliance, because I could probably speak to
Sure.
you all day, about the other thing. But I really want to focus on this because you guys do just amazing work, as you are sharing threat intelligence among your members, and obviously everybody across the board in cybersecurity, whether it's one-off companies or organizations and alliances like ours and yours and all of that, are seeing a rise in COVID-19, related cyber threats. What is the Cyber Threat Alliance seeing, and what are you guys doing to combat this?
Well, I think what you could say is we're not seeing an increase in the overall volume of malicious activity.
Hmm.
So it's not like there's more phishing or more scams out there, now than say, 6 months ago. But what we are seeing is a dramatic shift in the themes, and the malicious actors, the bad guys, really taking advantage of people's fears about COVID-19, about the coronavirus. And so there's been this, veritable tsunami of, phishing related emails that have that as a theme. You see, an enormous number of websites and domains being stood up with that as a theme, as lures. And so what we've really seen is this very rapid shift into using COVID-19 and the coronavirus and the pandemic and all of those kinds of topics now as lures and as part of that malicious activity.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting too, because I think it really underscores the point that I think we see typically in cybersecurity, just going back years at a very small level. When Christmas rolls around, we see fake Christmas cards.
Yeah.
When Thanksgiving rolls around, but now we have an entire planet that is focused on one thing, and it's just exploding and all of that. And our own advisories have reported that we're not seeing really any unique phishing tactics. It seems like it's the same old. They're just now using, as you said, the COVID-19 or the coronavirus. But I find it interesting though, because your members are actually often the ones on the front lines, with the threat detection systems, whether they're firewalls or endpoints or whatever that is. Your members are obviously focused on collecting threat intelligence, whatever it is, and obviously sharing it amongst your alliance. Are they seeing shifts in attack patterns or threats out there that just the rest of the world, as cybersecurity or just humans, aren't seeing?
Actually, I mean, I think when you look at it, you can see some interesting patterns. And so, obviously, ransomware has become, has emerged as like really the technique of choice, right, for a lot of the criminal organizations, and they use it in a variety of ways. And so, really, I think that has become one of the dominant threats that you really face, particularly if you're any sort of small to medium business or a government agency, or particularly municipalities. Municipal governments here in the United States are particularly prone to being targeted by ransomware. Interestingly, we saw sort of a rise and fall of cryptocurrency mining, illegitimate, illicit cryptocurrency mining. And when Bitcoin went really high, you had, the cryptocurrency miners really went to work, and as that fell, that sort of fell off. So you can sort of track some of those patterns. But what's I think the other thing that you mentioned is that many of these things go back years, right? And I mean, it's really it's really just comes down to the cyber criminals are they're just not going to change tactics if what they're doing still works. For the most part, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing, and they're going to keep using the tools that they're using as long as those tools keep working. And I think it really just shows that that the changes can be very rapid, but most of the time they're more evolutionary than revolutionary.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And I think if I were to add to that, I would probably say then we can't really discount the psychology of humans in general. In a pandemic, as you mentioned before, when we're all panicking and oh my God, and so they are playing on that using just the traditional tactics. But now it's come download my World Health Organization, list and all of that. And that's I find that absolutely just insane, just in the explosion that everybody is recording. Now, I know many Cyber Threat Alliance members are obviously products that a lot of organizations and companies use, and I'm not going to go through the whole list, but when I'm seeing like Cisco and Palo Alto Networks and Sophos and SonicWall and Rapid7 and a whole bunch of other, threat detection members that are all part of your organization and sharing in real time, which I think is amazing. They obviously are the ones that are defending the hospitals, around the world. Many of these products that you guys represent are now here. So by virtue of that, as your members are working with the hospital systems and organizations in health around the world, as well as their supply chain, because I think that's a huge thing too that a lot of people really don't talk about. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Are your members getting advanced insight into this pandemic from the hospital systems that they're supplying their technology and services to?
Well, I think that what you can really see from our members is that, I think while we've always talked about healthcare being a critical infrastructure, right? It's always been one of the critical infrastructure sectors.
Mm-hmm.
I think really what you can see is just how critical that sector is, but also how far they need to come, right? They have not had to face the same level of criminal activity. Sorry about the dog in the background.
We're all working from home, right?
Yeah.
We're all on lockdown. It's okay. No worries.
I think what you can see is that the financial sector, right, has faced criminal activity that forced them to, change and adapt. The energy sector was not far behind because it faced that. And while there have certainly been things, that have affected the healthcare sector, like the Anthem breach and other things going back, several years, I think now we're really realizing that the healthcare sector needs to make similar investments in upgrading their technology, but they face some really unusual challenges. For example, many of the hospitals are public hospitals, right? So they're dependent on local governments for support. You've got staff that are under a lot of pressure, and so how much can you upgrade security right now in the middle of a pandemic, right? I mean,
right.
And so I think this is really exposing how much we need to invest in our health sector for its security over the longer term, and not just the big hospitals, right? To your point about the supply chain, it's everything from the drug suppliers to the company that supplies the oxygen tanks, or even, that's supplying their, in this day and age, right, that's supplying their PPE. So I think it's really just exposing how broad and how complex this environment really is.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. Just in my own experience, working with health systems from small to large, we occasionally run into that. Well, I'm still using a database that runs on DOS, and we're not getting rid of it. And it's like, well, it's kind of paying lip service to the whole HIPAA compliant thing, at least here in the United States, let alone, other compliances around the world that other governments have, but I think it actually opens up another question when we're thinking about this, because I remember right at the beginning of this pandemic when everybody was getting locked down and the whole world was kind of, just scrambling to secure themselves. We had seen statements from groups like the Maze ransomware gang and all of that saying, well, we're not going to hit hospitals and health systems. And it really doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. And I was just wondering if the CTA is seeing the same thing. No honor among thieves, if you will.
Pretty much. Yeah. We have joked among ourselves, look at that. It turns out they're untrustworthy criminals. Right. We have not seen that, and I think most of some of it does appear to just sort of be part of the random, sort of spraying of, attacks that happen, but we certainly have not seen anybody take steps to not target the healthcare sector.
Yeah. My Sunday videos are always breaches of the week, and last Sunday was actually Parkview medical system in Pueblo County, Colorado getting hit. So it's, I think it's a nonstop thing. But I think that's also why groups like the Cyber Threat Alliance exist, because that is such an integral part of just getting this, catching these guys in the wild and then sharing it with all of the other types of detection technologies. So if I'm running one platform and you're running another, now they're updating and inoculating in real time, which is, I think, just the beauty of the collaboration that you guys have going in the CTA. And that's also, I think, a little bit of what we're doing here in the COVID-19 Cyber Threat Coalition here, as we've had wonderful partnership with you thus far. So how do you think organizations like the COVID-19 Cyber Threat Coalition and the Cyber Threat Alliance can work more closely together? Like, I've been, like I said, very impressed with our collaboration, but I'm wondering if we could all be doing more to just further our mutual goals in protecting the world. And what do you think about that?
Sure. I mean, I think that, one of the things that I always say is that, the Cyber Threat Alliance is the shining example of why we talked about, threat intelligence sharing for so long instead of doing it.
Yes.
Because it turns out doing it is hard, right?
Yeah.
It takes work, it takes investment. It's resource intensive. It's not just something that you do, sort of just randomly, right? I mean, it takes a lot of work to make it happen. And so I think that, one of the advantages of an organization like CTA is that by establishing a permanent organization that's, that we're an incorporated nonprofit, right? And
Mhm.
we've got, a board, and we've got the structure that you need to be enduring.
Mhm.
Um, but by nature, we have to, we bring members on. We're very open to bringing on new members, but there's a very set process for doing that. When you're in a crisis like a pandemic, right, you also need to have organizations like yours that come about very rapidly, that stand up, that can incorporate people very rapidly from all over the place, from many different, organizations and groups and countries and dynamics, and can bring those together to bring that capability to bear. And so in my view, actually the most powerful combination is when, our types of organizations can actually work together like we have been, and encourage, for example, we encourage our members, to look, if you want to amplify your impact that you're having, make sure that you're also participating in some things like the COVID-19 CTC,
Mm.
so that you can really amplify those effects. And we're very happy to take the learning that occurs in your organization, via our members, to bring that back into to CTA, and shape how we're thinking about it. So we very much look at it as, how do we help our members share specific data, threat intelligence related to coronavirus, and then how. And I agree with you, Nick, that like being sure that we're working together is really the way to have the impact that we want.
Yeah, and it's just, it's been very interesting to see the coalition grow and evolve. I mean, and I think one of the, to that point, I think where we have almost 4,000 members, we have an army of volunteers that we are more than happy to lend to the Cyber Threat Alliance and share that intelligence, and it's coming from every vertical on the planet. We've got financial institutions and health systems, and it's been really great to see. But to your point too, we are a temporary group. We are focused on one very specific threat. And when, the coronavirus, for lack of a better term, just becomes another, oh, it's, flu and coronavirus season again,
Right.
and we're all living our lives. I mean, there's no point for us. And, that's when, the intelligence that we've gathered and all of that obviously, goes to the Cyber Threat Alliances of the world. And I think it's just a great symbiotic relationship. And, with that, is there anything else that you'd like to share? And thank you for joining me here. This has been just awesome. Thank you.
Oh, very happy to do it. And the other thing I would say is, we are always very open to, CTA is focused on cybersecurity providers. So those that provide cybersecurity services to others, whether you are a cybersecurity vendor, to use that term, or a platform provider. So always, you can always check out our website and see how to get in touch with us. And if you want to, if you're interested in exploring what being a CTA member would mean.
Yes, that's
But
great.
I will also just say too that we very much appreciate, the volunteers and the folks that are working so hard to help protect the infrastructure. So we very much thanks to you and the organization for the work that you're doing to help combat all the different phishing and scams and other things that are going on during this pandemic.
Yes, and thank you for everything that the alliance is doing. I can tell you personally, there's a lot of products that are members that I use, for my customers, and I feel a lot. I sleep better at night knowing that your organization exists and you guys are just doing wonderful work. And of course, if people want to get in touch with you or follow you or the Cyber Threat Alliance, where can they find you, or the
So
Cyber Threat Alliance?
so you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Cy Alliance Prez, and you could also find the Cyber Alliance, Cyber Threat Alliance on Twitter as well. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. And then, of course, our website is cyberthreatalliance.org.
Great, great. And again, Michael, thank you so much. It's been an honor just talking everything from White House cybersecurity to COVID-19 to the Cyber Threat Alliance. And thank you again for your time.
Thanks. You're quite welcome. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.